Entertaining, informative, and educational. Inspiring content that makes a difference.
This is the Maximus Troy Publications Broadcasting Network.
Join the Academy. The Breeders' Academy proudly presents Bred to Perfection with Kenny Troiano, a show for serious breeders.
Whether you are looking to create a new strain or simply improve an old one, you have come to the right place.
Daddy, I want more chickens.
Oh, boy.
Now, here's your host, Kenny Troiano.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Bred to Perfection. My name is Kenny Troiano, and this, my friends, is the podcast devoted to helping you become a better breeder and taking your strain to the next level. That's right, my friends. It doesn't matter if you are brand new to breeding or you've been breeding for many years. There is something all of us can do to improve our fowl for future generations.
Life is like a pen of chickens. When they're mongrels, you never know what you're gonna get.
Okay, welcome to another episode of Bred to Perfection. I'm Kenny Troiano, founder of the Breeders' Academy, and I'm here with my wife Nancy and my co-host Frank Bradley. How you guys doing?
Hey, Frank, unmute.
I told you, and I even hit it. I thought I unmuted it. It's got a mind by its own. I knew that would happen.
I knew one of us was going to screw up.
Yep.
See,
Leave it to me.
what you listeners don't know is when we see our screen here, we've got the three of us on the screen, and then down at the bottom, you can see us in a different part where it shows whether we're muted or unmuted. And so that's how I knew that Frank was still muted. Well, the thing of it is we talked about this before we went on. Make sure you unmute yourself when it's time to unmute. And Frank was like, oh, no, I think I'm going to be the one who forgets.
I knew one of us was going to forget. So.
Yep, every time. And sometimes it mutes when I don't even, I'll be sitting here and Kenny would say, Frank, you're muted, check your mute. And I'd be muted. So I don't know what it was.
And know something we don't know. Frank's always mentioning how he's getting so much rain in Kentucky. It feels like Kentucky around here lately, doesn't it, Nancy? How much rain we're getting?
Yeah, it does. I'm telling you, Ramona flooded.
Yeah, and that doesn't usually happen. Matter of fact, our backyard in some places look like a lake. Matter of fact, we were calling it Lake Troiano. Come visit us.
Before the show, Kenny was telling me about that. And I said, imagine that 2 or 3 times a month.
Oh, no, I couldn't do that.
We work so hard to keep our birds looking as good as they can look. And here you're putting all this money, all this time, all this sweat into making them look their best. And then Mother Nature comes along overnight and just wipes it. It's frustrating. Like I told Kenny for the show, there's a couple of times just the weather alone has made me just about say the heck with it. But I say that, and the first pretty day I get back up, I forget all about it. So,
yeah, every day I've been going out there feeding. As I'm feeding, I'm shoveling mud and crap out of the pens, organizing the pens. I'm just trying to make it so the chickens are in a livable condition. And it's been strange. We usually don't get this kind of rain. It's been wet and cold here this month. More than usual, for sure.
Now, what do you mean in cold, temperature-wise? What are you calling cold?
You know,
During the day, 54.
That's cold. That's cold
during the afternoon. Yeah,
that's really cold.
You know, I mean, like this morning, we had a new refrigerator show up at 7 o'clock. They actually woke us up to tell us they're coming to do the refrigerator. Yeah. And we were out there. Man, my hands were freezing.
It was 38 degrees.
That's all? I thought it would be even colder than that. Even the delivery people were complaining how cold it was. So
I've got a buddy in Arizona, and we're in a group together, and he was complaining it was 58 and raining out where he lived in Arizona. And he said, man, I don't know how you guys stand the temperatures you get down. He says, it's 58 and raining. And he said, I've got a winter coat on. I'm freezing to death.
Yeah. Try delivering the mail with no heater in your truck.
Oh, gosh.
I've had one all week. I've been whining about it every time I come back in the office, and I'm freezing. Kenny, This reminds me when we're talking about the weather and you're talking about how your chickens can look really nice one day and a Santa Ana winds come through and all the feathers look brittle. That's one of the problems that we have a lot of times out here. It reminds me of when you were flying and we'd get all packed up and we were all ready to go out to the desert for the weekend. And you can't fly when it's windy out
No,
there.
yeah, that
You
kind of
don't
wind out
know.
there. No.
You don't know when the wind is going to be. It's luck of the draw. That
Well, it's like I
reminded
was
me of
talking
that.
to Frank before we got started, and the birds are getting ready to go into the molt. They're getting rid of all those cruddy feathers and growing all new feathers, and they start looking really good. Then they get into the winter, and then the rain and the mud comes, and then now they're dragging their tails in the mud, and you're spending your time cleaning pens, moving birds, putting dirt in there, getting the mud out. It just disheartens you. It messes with you mentally, like you were saying, Frank. Sometimes you just want to say, enough of this crap. You know what I mean?
That's been me many a times. But like I say, I'd be like, if I had enough of this, and right when I get to the straw that broke the camel's back, we get a couple pretty days in, and I look at them, and I'm like, okay, I'm
It's all
okay now.
good.
It's
Yeah.
good shape. I'm over my rant. I'm down off my soapbox, so I'm good to go again.
I was talking to Frank about this too. Something that I don't usually get. I'll get pox once in a while. Like every 5 or 6 years, I'll get pox. And it's never really bad. See a few scabs on a few birds here and there. Nothing real bad. But this is probably the worst year I've seen for wet pox, which I usually hardly ever get. I might get a bird here and there once in a while, but I got it more than usual. And I lost a really nice black pearl stag that it just,
Oh,
yeah, I forgot to tell you.
you didn't tell me about that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Those
I
are
was
tough.
so upset.
Yeah. That's a death sentence at my place. I'll put up with dry pox. They get over that pretty fast. Like me and Kenny was talking about, they get wet pox. If they get over it pretty fast, then yeah, they're going to be okay. But if it drags on for a week or so, it just takes a toll on them, and they're never going to reach their full potential. So I just cull them as soon as they get down pretty bad shape.
I did coaching calls all day yesterday, and it was neat because one of the things that they were saying, almost every one of them I did, was they would go to other farms or talk to other breeders. And it just sounds like what we're teaching is starting to gain some traction. We're starting to see a big difference. And I'm noticing that too on Facebook and some other places where the vocabulary is changing. Some of the things they're talking about, they're actually doing some things different. They're not talking a lot about crossing lately. They're talking about creating strains and things like that. So I think what we're doing is making a big difference.
You talked about this just not too long ago, usually once a week anyway, but you can see just the mindset is changing to where it's more about making families, making a strain rather than what cross is good on Albany or what cross is good on Hatch. You're seeing them actually talk about creating strains and talking more about purity of blood.
Yeah. I'm just hoping that we're changing. I don't want to say it this way, but that we're putting some breeders on notice, and that because we're making a big influence on the potential buyers that could be buying birds from them, that maybe these sellers are going to change the way they do things, because they're going to be challenged more these days than they were in the past on the way they raise them, the way they breed them, whether they're creating strains, whether they're crossing them, whether they're actually making progress, whether they got birds that are uniform and consistent. I think it's going to be putting a lot of breeders, a lot of sellers on notice.
I think you're right, Kenny. And I think those days of these guys saying, oh, don't worry, he's short-legged and he's way underweight, he's small, he don't look like much, but he'll really produce some nice offspring. I think those days are catching up with them, and that's what they're so scared about, is because they're not being able to pawn those culls, pawn those roosters that they don't want to breed off on other people. Or they say, I know my roosters better than anybody. I've had them longer than anybody. I know them better. Take my word. Breed this one and this one. And he's too lanky, or he's too this, or he's too that. And it upsets them because they can't make them see what they want them to see.
Yeah, too many contrasting characteristics, and they're going to be bringing it to their attention too. I'm not hearing as many people using medications too. I'm starting to see a little bit of a difference there, where that was the crutch that many breeders use to get their birds over the hump a lot of times so that they still could sell them. But just so you know, our podcast, this is our live show, but our podcast comes out every Monday on just about every platform that does podcasts. So you can probably find us anywhere. But the one coming up Monday is with Dr. Gallardo on external parasites. A couple weeks ago, we did internal parasites. These kind of go hand in hand with each other. So make sure you check those out. A lot of good information there. Before we get into the topic, this is going to be a really good topic. It's going to be the continuation of our series that we're doing right now, which is breeder and multiplier. Like I said, this is going to be a multi-part series, similar to what we did with Purity of Blood, but it's going to be on talking about true breeders, or are you a crossbreeder or multiplier, and all the different topics that are associated with that. So before we get started, hold on a second, I'm not where I should be.
And before you do what you were going to just do, let's read real quick what Crosby has to say.
Okay.
I had a young man at my local TSC that loves the gamefowl birds, and I am trying really hard to convince him not to say hatch/Kelso, etc. He shows me a picture, and I say, "That's a black-breasted red." He's laughing. Way to go, Crosby.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing I want to hear. We do need to get away from the names of strains, the name game, the percentage game. I think the breed as a whole is going to improve if we do that.
Hold on. I got another one I've got to share with you. This is from Eric. Something going on?
I'm going to fire you in a minute here.
My computer. Oh, got to remind me later. My computer is talking to me here.
Really?
Okay, here we go. Yeah, it was talking to me. I'm like, do you want to do this now? I'm like, no, I do not want to do this now. And now it's messing up. Let's see if I can click it and do it again.
There it is. You got
There it is. Okay, so after knowing in the Breeders' Academy and learning from it, I've come to find out that most big breeders and most breeders don't really know what they are doing. Not true breeders.
Yeah.
We agree, Eric.
Yeah, we're going to talk a lot about that in upcoming weeks. Today's going to be a really good topic. It's going to be an easy one for us. It's the kind of thing we talk about all the time, actually. But it's a really fun topic. So we'll be right back after this message.
We'll be right back after word from our sponsor. This show was brought to you by the Breeders' Academy, where we will help you to increase your knowledge of breeding, advance your skills as a breeder, and help you to improve the quality and performance of your fowl. As a member, we'll provide you with the roadmap that you will need to create a true family or strain. I urge you to check it out. You've got nothing to lose, and you can cancel at any time. You also have a 30-day money-back guarantee. Simply go to www.breedersacademy.com to sign up.
The Breeders' Academy will not only change the way you think about breeding, but improve the way you breed your fowl.
I hope to see you there. So let's get started.
Okay, I want to tackle a couple of these real quick before we get started, because I thought they were interesting. So,
You got it, bud.
any advice on where you can buy game fowl to get started? This is one of the things it's hard for me to do. And I tell my members all the time, because one of the questions I get a lot, who do you recommend to go get birds from? I'd normally recommend somebody like Frank and myself, but a lot of times we don't sell birds. We're just not into that. And that's up to Frank whether he wants to sell birds or not, but I just don't. But for the most part, it's like some breeders are really good breeders, but some of the best ones I know of don't even sell birds. And then there's some that are good breeders, but I still can't guarantee whether they're going to ship you a good bird. I don't have any control over that. So when they don't, that comes back to me and makes me look bad. So I don't do that. And then on top of that, there are some that I think have the right idea of breeding, but when I go to their farms, they have a mixture of good birds and bad birds. So I'm afraid you're going to get bad birds there. So all I can tell you is that you can get good birds and bad birds from great breeders. You can get good birds and bad birds from peddlers. Go in the Breeders' Academy, learn how to select the proper bird. Go to some of the programs like Confirmation of Body, Defects and Disqualifications. Gives you a really good idea of how they should be built, how they should be structured, and then know all the different defects that exist. Then you can go on those farms and select properly. Because all you really need is a good cock and hen. They don't even need to be related to start a strain. And we teach you how to do that at the Breeders' Academy. But to actually recommend somebody, I don't do that. It's something that usually comes back to bite me.
Well, Kenny, once again, too, you can't guarantee the quality of the birds.
That's
good,
right.
But you never know what kind of illness, disease, sickness is on that guy's yard as well. So you could be bringing something home with you worse than bad traits or genes. That's one of the biggest. We always say it. Conformation and health go hand in hand. That would be your number one.
Yep.
Do your homework, check the guy out, check with other people that's bought, ask for references. I wouldn't be ashamed one bit to ask a guy for references of the other people that's bought from me before.
And whatever you bring home, quarantine.
Yeah.
I have a 30-30 rule that you quarantine them for 30 days. If they don't show any signs of disease, they're not symptomatic for anything, put in a sacrificial bird with them. And if you still don't see anything, then you can probably integrate them into your yard. But don't ever take the chance of just taking some bird from somebody else's farm and placing with yours. I don't care how good it looks, how healthy it looks, because you never know what's going to come out. Because they can look great, but they're carriers. There's a lot of diseases you can be carriers for, and you got to watch out for that.
You're right, Kenny. They can look to be a picture of health, but you take that bird home, like Kenny said, especially if you put a little stress on him, go without a day without feeding him, make him stressed. And if there's something in there, I promise you it's going to come out.
One more here. This is funny. When they say Hatch or Kelso, I run. Yeah, I hope more people start thinking that way because those names don't mean anything. It's going to be nice to get past that kind of thing. Okay, let's get started. Last time in the show, we covered quality versus quantity. Okay, and that was part 2. Now we're into part 3. We're going to take it to the next level. And today we're going to talk about having a strong desire to improve and perfect your strain. And I think this is important because some people just get birds. They don't really have a desire to actually improve them. They're just breeding. I don't even think they're looking for birds that are better than the parents or actually finding ways to improve them. They're just multiplying birds. They're just creating birds. And I think they're going nowhere, Frank, real fast that way.
I've got a name for those, Kenny. I've always had a name for those. Those are replicators. They buy birds, and the only thing they're doing is replicating. And it's not from them not wanting to do it. It's from a lack of experience and know-how. With us, we breed chickens. We want the offspring to be much better than the parents.
That's a criteria for us. That's how we gauge our progress. Yep.
It's a must. It's a have to. But with them, what they get is what they get. And they breed them back. And they don't look at the quality of the bird from the parents. They just, okay, this is his mother. This is her father. Let's just breed them. And then next thing you know, it's all messed up and they're going back from the same guy buying birds, doing the same thing back over again.
So a lot of people will say, what does it take to be successful when it comes to breeder? And I guess my first response would be to follow the examples of a great breeder. And we're going to take that apart and we're going to show you what makes up a great breeder. But it's going to be a hard criteria to talk about because everybody does things differently, and that's fine. The way they raise their birds, the way they run their farms, the programs that they use, the progress that they make. So to one person, a great breeder means this, but to another, it means that. So we're going to try to give you some kind of a guideline to follow and what to watch out for that might help you with that. That's what I'm hoping for. But when it comes to breeding, it's not just a way of thinking. It's about doing things in a certain way, regular and a continued practice, but doing things that we would consider like a prerequisite or requirement for success. And although some breeders do things different, I still think you can either do it right or do it wrong.
There's a fine line between those two. There's not a great big wide area, gray spot between those. It's just like we tell the members when they're going through the founders program, you can't skip the parts that you want to skip and just go to the parts that you want to do. You have to follow it in order. There's a rule of thumb to this. If you go through A to Z, you're going to be fine. But if you go from A to D to just mix it all up, you're not going to be successful whatsoever. There's certain guidelines that you have to be patient. You have to be dedicated. You have to have a good work ethic. And I think the number one thing is you strive for perfection, which we won't ever get perfection, but you still have to use that as a rule of thumb to go towards.
When you talk about skipping all over the place, now we talk about all the time, the Founders Program, it's a program that's made up of many methods, all used at a certain time for a specific time to achieve a specific purpose. And when you see people skipping around, they're not really using a program, they're just using the methods. And you don't get there that way.
No. I think that's the biggest downfall to any breeder is trying to take shortcuts. I think a shortcut is a deadfall, regardless of what you're breeding. It doesn't have to be chickens. If it's cattle, pigs, sheep, if you're taking shortcuts, you're never going to get to where you actually want to be, ever.
I would say a great breeder, he's always striving for perfection. And Frank said it really well, that it's something that we strive for, but we never actually get, because the closer we get to perfection, the further it moves away. But as long as we're moving forward and looking for the best birds, the birds that are as close to perfection as possible, we're going to make progress. The strain is going to improve each year.
Kenny, I got a question.
Sure.
What do you mean by that statement? The closer you get to perfection, the further it moves away.
First of all, it's impossible to ever get perfection. You could show me your best birds, but I can go on your farm, pick up that bird, I can show you where the faults are. They can always be improved, and we'll talk about that too. Just understand that if you think you're ever going to get there, you're not. It's about moving forward all the time, progressing each generation. Like we say, perfection's unattainable, but excellence is. As long as you're striving for perfection, you're going to reach excellence.
It's like this, Nancy. Right when you think they can't get no better, they'll prove you wrong. In a few years, you look back in your pictures, you go, damn, those are a whole lot better.
They can always get better. I've had many breeders tell me, like in the Breeders' Academy, they would say, I've been a member for 3 years. I've got them coming pretty good. They're pretty uniform. I think they're the best they're going to get. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel my membership. And then a year later, he comes back in and says, oh, I'm running into problems with this. I'm running problems with that. I need questions about this. And what we realize is that even when you think you have them as good as they can get, they always can get better. But it's a balancing act. It's a matter of always trying to improve them. But we start out by exaggerating traits. But some people, they go too far. They exaggerate them to a point where it's excessive. And then the birds are now monstrosities compared to what they should have been. They don't represent their breed. So knowing how far to exaggerate them is really important. So you get to that point when you think they're where they should be. They represent their breed. And then from there, it's a balancing act, because they're always going to try to revert to the wild type. They're going to try to revert to past ancestries, okay? So you move them a little this way, and they want to either go farther, so you bring them back, and all of a sudden they go back this way. And so you got to keep balancing them. And in the meantime, you're fine-tuning them. You're improving them along the way. I say it all the time. Everybody's seen my seed fowl, what I started with, but after 10 or 12 years, they looked pretty good. I really thought they were great representatives of American games. They looked great. That's what I modeled everything after. You look at them today, it's so much better. What's funny, Frank, is you don't sometimes know that you've improved them unless you're taking video and pictures every day and comparing them. And that's the only way I would have known it. If I didn't do that, I would have never known.
Yeah. That's the reason I do what I do with the videos and pictures, because you think, okay, these birds, just like you said, Kenny, they can't get any better. I've got them to where I need to get them. But like you said, you turn a bird loose without any selective breeding in an environment, they will adapt to that environment. They'll start changing immediately. So you've got to keep a tight grip on your breeding program to keep your birds in line, because if you slack a little bit, they could even go to be better than what they were. But usually, rule of thumb, it's going to be worse than what it is if you just say, okay, I'm just going to breed them and let them go. Without selective breeding, they can really get messed up fast, really.
Kenny, let's address this real quick, because I know there are some people out there that have that question, especially people that are new and haven't
Since we brought it up
to us before.
I saw the question. I thought maybe I'll take care of it later.
I'm sure you can do this in a minute.
I don't know about that.
You describe it. It makes a lot of sense. So
okay.
Go for it.
Now, you look at the birds that are out there today, and we call them hatch, we call them kelso, we call them sweater. But all those breeders were from a long time ago. For the most part, those breeders didn't even breed pure strains. They were always bringing new blood. They were exchanging birds with each other, especially hatch and kelso. So they were never concentrating on breeding pure strains. Were they good breeders? They were able to produce birds that were able to do the purpose for which they were bred for. So yeah, they were good breeders. But were they trying to create a strain? No. But any bird, Frank says this all the time, I steal it from him, is that any bird that comes off their farm, that person who bought the bird said, I bought this from hatch. So it's a hatch. He could have bought a pair. He probably bought a cock here and there. So then he brings in someone else's bird. It could be named anything, or he may not even know what it is. He breeds it to it. He breeds it for a while. Now he's telling everybody he has a hatch family. And then he sells birds to someone else, and then they bring in new birds into it. And then everybody's sharing birds. They're all crossing everything into them, but yet they call them hatch. The name means nothing. It doesn't exist. Everybody's so-called hatch is different from other people's hatch. And we call it the big con. I know that it's not pure. They know that I know it's not pure. I know that they know that I know that it's not pure, but we still call them hatch. So we need to just get away from these names, start calling them our own, or just call them black-breasted reds, and try to do what we can to create families from what we can get, the best we can get, move forward from that, and get rid of these names. Because everybody goes, oh, if you want a good cross, you got to have hatch blood in them. Okay, nonsense, because it doesn't work that way. Like we said, not everybody's hatch is the same. How can you make that kind of a statement? How can you make that the criteria, what improves a strain or makes the best cross? It just doesn't work. It's not real. It's fake. We call it the name game because it is a game. And then everybody says, oh, I've got these pure hatch, but they're not pure. I got these pure kelsos, which are not pure. I breed them together and they go, oh, I got these great birds that are half this and half this, or 3/4 this and quarter that, which the percentages don't mean anything because genes don't work like that. When we're crossing birds, we're dealing with dominant recessive genes. We're dealing with sex-linked genes along with polygenic genes, which is quantitative inheritance, which changes the whole game. Now, if you want to understand what we're talking about, we just did an episode in the podcast. It's actually on my podcast on YouTube. It's called Crossbreeding and the Recombination of Genes. If you want to really know how I feel about this, go watch that. Watch the whole thing. We'll describe to you why it doesn't work. We'll talk about the crossover event. We'll talk about meiosis in the crossover event and how you're recombinating the genes every time you bring in new blood. I could go on and on with this, but I'm telling you, it's a farce. Get away from it as fast as you can. And anybody who's talking like that doesn't know what they're talking about.
The only way that you could get a hatch or kelso right now, this day, is if there was a breeder out there that was breeding good chickens and his last name was Hatch or Kelso. That's the only way that you can get it because the original Hatch or Kelsos have had so many hands on them that I would say there's not even any of the blood that the originators, Hatch or Kelso, put in their blood that's even left in them. I would go that far to say that the blood that they actually put in them one time is no longer there.
We call the name game and the percentage game the peddler's playground. Now, I'll go as far as this, because I know this game's been going on for a long time, and without the names, nobody knows how to talk to each other. But when you listen, the conversation's really going nowhere because the facts that they're using to create the conversation doesn't hold water because those names don't mean anything.
What McKinney is trying to get across is if the breeder is actually breeding them, if you breed fowl for 4 or 5 years, those are your birds. Those are not somebody that died 100 years ago, guys, okay? That's what we're trying to say. Those birds don't exist. The only way they would exist is if somebody had put them away and had never added any outside blood to them and kept them the way that they were back then. And plus, whoever's been breeding them has changed them just in selection. There's so many different things that go in concept. It's really impossible, and I'm sure Kenny agree with me. It's really impossible for those birds to exist today. It would be mind-blowing if it could happen.
Through the years, I've seen this happen so many times. I knew some breeders. I'm not going to mention names. Some of them have already passed away. They would have birds on the farm. They really didn't know what they were. They told me they didn't know what they were, but they would get customers coming over. And because they look like a sweater, they would say, oh, I got sweaters. This guy looked like a kelso. They say, I've got kelsos. This would look like a hatch. They say they have hatch. Have no idea what they are. Sell them to someone. That person gets them. He thinks he's got hatch. We can go on and on. I hate this topic, actually.
The same thing that you're talking about right now, Kenny.
Yeah.
There was a guy, and this is a true story, guys. The same thing. Kenny just had it pop in my head. This guy went to another guy's farm. They was friends. And he said something about, man, I really like your Lacey's. And he goes, that's not a Lacey. That's a Brenner roundhead. He goes, you told me that you had Lacey's. He said, I did last year. They were selling good. He said, the Brenners selling better this year. Yeah. So they're Brenners this year.
Yeah.
So that's how a lot of it's done. Whatever's selling big, if they look like that's what they are, pretty much. That's how the name game
It's a peddler's playground. Do you want to play the game or do you want to move forward properly? Do you want to actually create a strain or are you just okay with crossing birds all over the place? You don't need the name to do that. You can do that, okay?
It holds a breeder back.
It does.
I really think it holds a breeder back. It really does.
Absolutely.
That's a good aspect right there.
Yeah, I just call them green-legged chickens. That's fine. It's just one trait of the bird.
A green leg can come from many different places. A lot of people, Kenny, really, this day and time, don't even know Hatch and Kelso was a person, was a breeder.
Yeah.
They look at it as a chicken. They don't look at it as a man's last name.
Mhm.
I've seen quite a few people. I had no idea.
I heard recently someone saying that I have a group of birds and I bred them and they produce offspring with yellow legs and green legs. And I separated those two. That's what he said. I separate those two. So now I have two families and I breed those. And then whenever I need traits from this one to improve this one, I bring it into there and vice versa. And I just keep crossing them back and forth to get the traits I want. And he doesn't realize is, let's say you did take them in two different directions and you were able to purify them, which takes many generations. Whenever you bring birds into this one to fix it, no matter whether you're doing it that way or you got a family and you're borrowing a bird from someone because you think it has some qualities that you want, whether it's a trait or performance or production, and you breed it into yours, that one infusion never fixed anything. The improvements was hybrid vigor. It's not sustainable. It's not inheritable. It's temporary. A trait like that, to make it be expressed in the family on a uniform and consistent basis, you'd have to do it multiple generations. So you never improve a family with one infusion of outside blood ever. It just doesn't work that way. And if you watch that show, I don't want to get into it now because it's a whole nother topic. Watch the show and it talks about the process of meiosis with the crossover event and how it recombinates the genes. And basically what you did when you brought in the new bird is you changed the family forever. That's all you did. You completely changed the family. Okay.
And started over.
So you cannot breed a bird into a family, getting the quality of it, and then breed it back out. It doesn't work that way. And a lot of people think so.
That's a huge misconception that
Yep.
it can be bred back out. Once it goes in, it's in there to stay.
Nancy, we did not explain that real quick. I knew
I
we
knew it
wouldn't.
wouldn't.
You took us completely off course here.
I knew it would.
It needed
Yes,
to be
Ryder?
said.
Should we move on now? That's all I want.
Okay, let's move on. What are we doing
I
now?
mean, we could talk about that subject all day. Okay, the criteria of a great breeder. He sees value in purity of blood. Now, this is something that I would talk to people and they would say there's no such thing as purity of blood, that it doesn't exist. There's no way to get purity of blood. And I say there is. And what's the criteria? It's simple. A family that is uniform, consistent, and that can repeat itself. And you don't get a lot of surprises. Yes, you'll get variation from time to time, but it's never one that is in a completely different direction. I do believe you can create a pure family.
That's the other misconception that a lot of people has, that there's no such thing as purity of blood, because they really don't understand the concept of purity of blood. I think once they learn the true definition of purity of blood, they'd have a change of heart with that.
You can't create a strain without understanding the value of purity of blood. Let's put it this way, inbreeding. A lot of people are afraid of inbreeding. You can't create a pure strain without inbreeding. But yet they're afraid of inbreeding. They avoid inbreeding at all costs. Now, I understand this can be a bigger issue with animals,
Yeah.
but chickens can handle a lot of inbreeding. But it is a prerequisite when it comes to creating a strain. And you got to come to terms with that.
Yeah, but you got to know when to do it.
Got to know when to do it, for how long, and you got to know when to stop. It's one of those things that is one of the best tools out there for creating a strain. It's just one tool. If you look at the Founders Program, it's made of multiple methods, inbreeding only being one of them. But you got to know when to use inbreeding. I was talking to a member yesterday, and he said he had it all wrong. He thought inbreeding was at one stage of the breeding program when actually it was in a different place. And once he realized that and he saw how it was all laid out and where inbreeding actually was, he was like, oh, that makes sense. Now I get it. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Because he was not making progress. He would see a little bit improvement, then it would fall backwards or they wouldn't improve anymore. He just wasn't seeing the progress that he should have. Once he started following the Founders Program, using inbreeding for the right reason at the right time, he started seeing progress. I was looking at his birds yesterday. They're beautiful. He was showing me where he started, which was completely different, to where he is now. It was amazing. Made me feel good.
It's a huge eye opener. I'll say that. But I was told one time in a group that was talking about inbreeding, and I just told them the basic truth is if you don't know what you're doing, stay away from inbreeding. Do
Yeah.
not do it. If you do not know what you're doing, stay away from it. And they were saying that I was trying to scare the people out of doing it. Wasn't I was trying to scare them out. I just didn't want to make a huge mistake, because unless you know what you're doing, you don't need to be doing it.
Like I said, inbreeding is a great tool if you know what you're doing. It's terrible if you don't. You can use inbreeding at various stages of the breeding program to either create the strain or improve the strain, depending on what you want to do. But most people fail or they have a bad experience because they did it wrong. They didn't understand. Now, I hear this all the time from some people who think are great breeders. You see them online all the time. People think highly of them. They think they're true breeders. And one of the things I keep saying, which just blows me away, is that inbreeding is used to see if your family is good or not. And what they're saying to these people is that when you inbreed and you see some poor specimens within the inbreeding, that those birds shouldn't be inbred, that they can't handle the inbreeding. And they don't understand, especially in the early part of the breeding program, when you first create a strain, you're dealing with all that genetic diversity. You're going to see variation. You're going to see genetic diversity. You're going to see good qualities and bad qualities. You're going to see the best and the worst. So when you breed them, you're going to see poor offspring, but then you also see medium quality, and then you see a handful of good ones. It did its job. It did what it was supposed to do. Because you're not going to breed to all of them. You only want to breed to the standouts. So get rid of the crap. The mediocre ones aren't up to your standard, which is fine, but they're still good birds. They'll be good for someone else. That's fine. As long as they're not defective, sick, they're fine. I don't have a problem with that. But it's the standouts that you're going to breed to, and then you move forward with those. It did its job. So everybody totally misunderstands inbreeding, and they do it wrong because of it, or they're afraid of it.
Yep.
Just because some of the offspring are crappy doesn't necessarily mean that you did a bad selection in breeding.
You're going to get them all. You're going to get them all. You're going to get crappy. You're going to get mediocre.
Yeah.
You're going to get standouts. Now, it's dependent on how much you get of each one of them, but it's going to be all over the board at first. I'll give you an example. Okay, I created 2 families using Fowler's program. Okay, when I first started doing the inbreeding, I got all kinds of garbage out of them. I got the mediocre, and I got some real nice birds. Now, years later, I liked both those birds so good, I put them together and made one family out of them. Now, when I done it that time, man, I was telling Kenny, they come out. I was like, man, I don't know if I got anything to cull. I don't think I even got a cull. Once we used inbreeding as what it was, straighten them up, clean it up to fixate some genes, then we were in good shape after that. Like Kenny's talking about when you first start. When you first start, you're going to get some hideous looking things. But now if you get something with 4 legs, 5 eyes, 2 beaks, 4 heads, it was already in there. Inbreeding didn't make it. Okay.
Let me ask you a quick question. So if you put 2 birds together and the offspring, what is the word when they don't nick and all the offspring die?
Oh, like a lethal gene thing?
Like a lethal gene. Mm-hmm. If that happens, then okay, I can't put these 2 birds together. Is that what,
a lethal gene's a whole different story. Lethal gene, if you have birds dying in the shell or dying shortly after hatching, and it's throughout all the offspring, there's different things that are considered lethal genes. But the one I'm mostly concerned with is the ones that's actually killing the birds at an early age or in the shell. Now, if you see that, and it happens every time, and I've seen that happen, I just could not get chicks from these guys no matter what I did, okay? Then the first thing I would do is I would just mate those birds to different birds and see what happens. Chances are, if it's a family already, that gene is within the family. There's not a whole lot you're going to do without starting completely over. Now, if you've brought in new birds, you're just starting, you're doing the lethal gene, then I would just say get rid of them and start over. So lethal genes is one of those things you got to be careful of. And I've just seen so many people destroy their strains. They do this experimentation. They start seeing problems with their birds. A lot of times can be fixed through selection, but they don't realize that. So they think they need to bring in new blood. Instead of creating a subline and doing a separate line on the side and working with them, they actually introduce them right into their foundation, introduce traits that destroy the strain, whether it's a recessive, unwanted recessive, or a lethal gene that they can never fix after that. The funny thing about lethal genes, a lot of times you don't know it right away. The only time a lethal gene is expressed is if both birds carry it. So you bring in a bird with a lethal gene, sometimes it could take you 3 or 4 years to even see the expression of that thing. But once it's that deep and it's throughout the yard and all the birds are carrying it, all of a sudden you're not hatching anything anymore. So that's the scary part. It's not something that you bring in evidence of it right away. Most of the time you don't see it for 3, 4, maybe 5 years down the road. But when you do, it's devastating. This could be a defect that's recessive. Most defects are recessive. Or it could be a lethal gene. Or like Frank likes to say all the time, it could be disease, which you don't see right away down the road. And you compound those genes. All those recessives start to compound to the point where all the birds are carrying it, and now they're all getting sick. You've introduced a weakness you can't get out of it. far from starting all over or bringing in new blood, which is, like I always say, is the last resort.
I had that happen when I was a teenager. What Kenny was talking about, the lethal gene, had two. What biddies did hatch would hatch out, and soon after hatching, they'd die. I tried to hen set them. They kept doing the same thing, so I split them up. I made them with different birds, non-related birds. They done fine, no problem. But as soon as I brought those back and started breeding them again, like Kenny was saying, 3 or 4 years down the road, it would hit again. I'd make two up. The biddies wouldn't hatch, or the ones that did hatch would hatch out and die soon after hatching. It's a devastating thing. It's something that you definitely don't want in your birds, for sure.
Anthony's saying, how much does inbreeding affect hatchability in future generations? Okay, hatchability, for the most part, is a hen thing, okay? A lot of times when the eggs aren't hatching, open them up and there's a chicken there, but they're just not hatching. A lot of times that's issues with the hen. It could be all kinds of stuff. It can be some recessives. It can be a lethal gene. But a lot of times when we're dealing with hatchability, it's a hen thing, poor mitochondrial DNA. Fertility, we can pretty much blame that on the rooster. The only difference is, I hope I'm not going all over the place. I got my mind spread out, but poor hatchability is an inheritable trait. Fertility is not. A lot of things can affect fertility, like environment, nutrition, old age. Some birds, they just lose their fertility, but it's not inheritable. Hatchability is. Hatchability is a very serious thing. Now, fertility, if the rooster all of a sudden isn't fertile, you can change his nutrition, you can change his environment, you can change different things, help him lose weight, that kind of thing will help. And that might improve. But if it doesn't, then you just get rid of the rooster and bring in a new one. Hatchability, if you have a hen who's just not able to hatch healthy chicks or chicks at all, most of the time you're just better getting rid of her.
I had problems with my cockerels where I have mine so heavy feathered. I went through a period there where I was having terrible fertility problems on the rooster side. And I don't think it was. I just needed to trim the feathers from the vent. Took care of my problem. It can be something as simple as that, or it can be as complicated as what Kenny was talking about with the lethal gene. You just have to figure it out what it is, actually.
He's saying, do you have to match a rare throwback to try a subline, or can you breed it to a regular of its blood? So I'm thinking he's thinking the foundation. Now, here's a misconception. A lot of people see a trait and they think it's a throwback. A lot of so-called throwbacks, atavisms, isn't related to an old bloodline or anything, but if you have some certain recessives that are just lingering in there, a lot of times what they call a throwback is just a trait. It's a recessive trait that the bird's carrying that happened to be matched by the other bird and it was expressed. So be careful what you're calling a throwback and why you're calling it a throwback, because it may not be what you think it is. But what I will say is when you see variation in the offspring and you see a sudden trait, it could be a mutation too. That's another thing that throws people off when it comes to throwbacks and atavism. Could be a simple mutation, which you could perpetuate that. But if you see a trait that pops up that you like, and I did this with the Maximus line, is I just kept looking for variations that worked in my favor, culling the ones that didn't, and little by little, the strain took shape. But to get some of those traits, especially like a mutation, to take place, is you not only have to breed that trait every time it shows up, but you have to exaggerate it for a while before it finds a place in that family. Otherwise, it could be easily lost. It takes some effort to see a throwback, see an atavism, or see a variation that pops up. It takes some effort to actually perpetuate it to the point where the family actually adopts it into its bloodline, I guess you could say. So be careful about throwbacks, because when I hear people say throwbacks nowadays, they want to match it to a hatch family. Oh, that's a throwback from the leaper side or something like that. It doesn't work like that. It's all about how the dominant and recessive line up. Are we talking about a homozygous dominant trait or heterozygous dominant trait? How does it match up to a recessive? When you breed the two recessives, the dominant disappears. Then you got the polygenic traits, which are breeding to the highest intensity or lowest intensity. Whether you're going to improve it or not, different defects have different genetic factors, whether they're dominant recessive or polygenic. Understanding that makes a big difference in how you select your birds and how you improve them along the way.
I got one, Kenny. I got one for you. Those throwbacks, that's the ones that you want to breed right there. Those are the best ones, the throwbacks.
Yeah, it's just a trait.
How many times have you heard that? How many times have you really
I've heard that a million times.
Those are the good ones. Those are the good ones.
The one that gets me
I guess
the most.
I hear you're joking, right?
Yeah, we're joking.
Yeah, I'm being sarcastic.
The ones I get all the time are the sports or the mutations that pop up like white. Oh, that's a throwback from the white clarets or something like that. It's just a simple mutation is what it is. It's not a throwback to anything.
Like
Any family can
Southeast
throw a
Dakota.
white from time to time.
Yeah, mine did on the ones that I call my Kentucky
Mhm.
Roundheads. One day, just boom, I start getting just snow white birds out of them. Red family the whole time, and this one time pow there was, and I went for it. So I actually breed them now. I just thought it was neat, something a little different. So I just kept them.
Yeah, so be careful with throwbacks because for me to answer that properly, you need to tell me what you think is a throwback. Maybe he's still
True.
there. Tell me what you're calling a throwback, and we can take this discussion a step farther. But I'd hate to see you concentrate on something that may not be able to be reproduced or improved or expressed down the road. Some things aren't. Beeman says, and your fowl will improve significantly. I can guarantee you that my fowl have never been better. Trust the process, guys. So basically what he's talking about, he's a member of the Breeders' Academy, and we have a program called the Founders Program, which is my breeding program. And he's done some great things with that program. Thanks, Beeman. Appreciate it. The next one would be a true breeder is never satisfied with where they are, which kind of goes with striving for perfection. And that's how you have to think because it's when you relax is when they fall apart. You always have to improve on them, make them better each generation.
That's the name of the game, guys. We want them as good as we can get them. We'll say it again. You strive for perfection. You're never going to reach it, but always keep that goal on hand because I tell you, the way it is these days, times are changing. People starting to see it in a different light, but base your breeding programs off science. And I promise you won't go wrong. Kenny took the Founders Program, and that's what makes it such a great breeding program is that it's science-backed. And science will never steer you down a bad road. Kenny's helped me with that over the years, made me more locked to the science rather than the old wives' tales and myths. I look at the stuff that I used to believe in, and I'm sure you was in that circle at one time too, sometime in your life. All of us was, I think. And I look back and I laugh at myself. How in the world could I have believed that crap?
Yeah.
It blows my mind.
A lot of people want to fight the science, and I think it's because they don't know it. So they don't want anyone else to know it too, because they're going to get left behind. And we're going to talk about that. I'm hoping it's going to be the next show, depending on how far we get with this one, because there's a lot of great topics I want to talk about here. But science is important. So it's going to be the next show we talk about. We're going to dig deep into that.
So Beeman is saying Kenny's got him so confident in his breeding skills. I'm fixing to start breeding meat rabbits and
Fix some boogers as well.
Yeah. Hey,
I'm
me and my
flexing my
father-in-law
muscles,
used
he
to do
says.
that. We done that back in the 90s. We bought these big, huge rabbits, and we'd breed them, and we loved rabbit at that time. But that was short-lived because my daughter come along, and she said, I'm not having it. It's not happening no more. So she put a damper in that. We was keeping them at a friend's house and doing it there, and she found out about that. So we had to stop that part of it. So
good meat, huh?
Oh, it's delicious. I love it. It's the best white meat that's out there. It really is. It's the best white meat that's out there, I think.
Yeah. I used to raise rabbits when I was a kid. Rabbits and chickens.
I love them.
I used to raise the New Zealand whites, and I would take them to the processing every so often, make some decent extra money. It was
They're good.
Yeah.
They're really good meat, healthy meat too.
This is a good question I think maybe you should address since you're talking about breeders. When breeding, you mentioned that you don't use the seed fowl again. Does this apply when working with mongrel seed fowl, or does it apply only to established strains?
Nope. You can create a family from any cock and hen. Where you end up and how they turn out is dependent on the quality of the bird you start with and your abilities as a breeder and the breeding program that you decide to use. Now, if you're starting with really bad birds that have a lot of faults, a lot of defects, they're sick, then you're probably not going to get there. The birds, they can be crosses, they can be mongrels, they don't have to be related. I would suggest that they're from the same variety, same color group, that kind of thing, so that you're not swimming uphill when it comes to trying to perpetuate a certain type of color and things like that. But no, they can be mongrels. That's what this Founders Program was created, because that's the way it mostly is. Even from good breeders, you'd be lucky if you go there and you get a good strain, that you get a good trio that's related, that's pure, because most of the time it doesn't happen. And even when you get an established strain, you get a trio or pair that's from an established strain that are in really good shape, chances are you're going to shape them as you go because your eye is going to be different than the original breeder, and they will change. They're going to change because of your eye as far as selection, and it's going to change due to the environment, the new environment. When we talk about epigenetics, things like that. But no, you can start with a cross, hybrid. You can start with a mongrel. Yeah, seed fowl can be anything. I just wouldn't start with 2 different breeds.
I would even take it a step farther, George. Even if I bought them off the greatest breeder in the world, I'm not going to take his word that they're a true family. I'm just not going to do it. I don't care who breeds them. There are going to be things in that family that you're not going to like, regardless of who bred them. So even if they was a true family, I'd still run them through the program. Make them your own. Kenny said, you're going to be the one selecting them. You make them your own and pretty much mold them the way that you want.
The name sounds familiar. I think he may be a member.
I think that's the reason I said that.
Yeah, so
I
let
think
me know if you are, and we can always do a coaching call, and I can walk you through it, because if you look at the Founders Program and the way it's set up, every method that's used in sequence, you're going to understand, and I describe it really well, but you're going to understand why each method is there and what it's meant to do, and it's to progress you into a foundation strain. If you're not a member, then I would encourage you to join. But the first 3 stages is all about cleaning up the bloodline, fixating some of the traits, locking in some of the genes, preparing them for the foundation stage. So those first few stages are really important. And it's all because of the kind of fowl we're starting with. It could be mongrels.
Okay. You might correct me if I'm wrong, but the way I'm reading the question is the seed fowl is a one and done.
It is for the most part. And that's the part that upsets people, is because they like that bird. They want to breed and create a strain because they like that bird. There's some qualities about that bird that they think are really good. But the whole idea of it being seed fowl, being the Adam and Eve of your family, they have one job, and that's just to get it started. Now, if you understand the next 2 stages and why they are the way they are, you understand why you do not want to keep breeding to the seed fowl right off the bat, because you're going to go backwards. Now, here's the problem most people make, and I see this all the time. They buy birds. They could be pure, they could be mongrels, they can be hybrids, they could be unrelated, or I'll go back to what I said the first time. They could be from an established strain. What they do is they breed them in a line breeding situation right off the bat, right when they got them. Okay, so they'll take the cock, they'll breed to the 2 hens, they'll do a line breeding situation. Sometimes they'll even do a line breeding with the cock, and then they get to the 7, 8, 15, 16s, and they breed it back together. Now, in the Founders Program, we're going to show you why you don't want to do that. There's so much wrong with that. When it comes to line breeding, there's so much that has to be done before you get to the line breeding, and then there's things you have to do after the line breeding. You don't get birds and line breed them right away. Line breeding is a cloning mechanism. You don't clone birds that aren't ready to be cloned. That means not only the phenotype that they're expressing, but the traits that they have within the genome that hasn't been expressed yet. So there's some cleanup that needs to be done before you start line breeding. And that's what we teach at the Breeders' Academy with the Founders Program.
It makes total sense when you see, like Kenny said, the next 2 steps after that. It's genius. It explains all of it. Mm-hmm. Just like Kenny said, you go out, you pay $1,500 for a trio, you bring them back home and you breed them, and you're done with them. But the next 2 steps explains that you don't have a big problem with spend that $1,500 then once you read the other 2 steps.
We had a member. This was ingenious. I don't know why I didn't think of it. I don't know why I didn't even suggest it to other people. Frank told me about it. Is that he bought a trio, spent some good money for it. He got his strain started using the Founders Program, and then he sold the trio and got his money back, but yet he got his strain going, which was ingenious. It was the best thing I ever heard.
The whole time I was telling Kenny this, and Ben was doing it at the same time, and I was like, that's a super idea. And Kenny's, that's a super idea. And it come up at the same time.
Yeah.
Goes, hey, I guess great minds think alike.
Yeah.
It's ingenious.
Yeah, it was so good. I was like, yeah, that's the way to do it, because you spend some good money on them, but you're going to see, no matter how good a bird you're going to get, they're going to change. Your selection, your eye for selecting is going to be different than the original breeder. You follow the courses like the confirmation and the defect and the selection courses inside the Breeders' Academy, it's going to show you how to select them properly. I can guarantee you those birds are going to change. And then on top of that, move them to a whole different area that's different than the original breeders. They're going to change even more due to epigenetic. And then even the feed is going to be different than original breeders. They're going to change there. They're going to change. Trust me. It's up to you to control that change. But they're not going to be like the original breeders.
I've saw this so many times, though, Kenny. People would do that, and they'd buy them on the West Coast, take them to the East Coast, or vice versa. And then it'd be like, oh, the breeder ripped me off, man. They don't even look like kids in a couple of years. But they just, like you said, they just don't understand the changes that they go through just in the environments alone, adding nutrition and the selection part onto it. That's a big change, huge change.
So he says, I'd love to say yes to being a member, but unfortunately I have been losing sleep watching and listening to all your shows available on YouTube. Okay, go to www.breedersacademy.com and I suggest that you join and we can get together, do some coaching calls, and I'll help you through it and we'll get you started.
I could have sworn he was a member
That name
already.
sounded familiar to me too.
Yeah, it did. It does. It does.
Maybe we have another George Cruz. You have a twin?
Yeah, if you're losing sleep, George, by listening to all our audio podcast and our live shows, this is nothing compared to what's inside the Breeders Academy website.
I could be shooting myself in the foot by saying we give a lot of good information in the live show and the podcast, but we skirt the really good information quite a bit. So we hold back so much. I mean, you're going to benefit from watching and listening to our show, but you're going to drive yourself crazy trying to figure out what we're talking about half the time because all the really good stuff's inside the Breeders Academy.
Yeah, we do hold back.
So I don't want to chase you all. Oh, I'm not getting the real information anyways. I'm going to go somewhere else.
Well,
that's up to you.
We had people before thought they could take the shows and put them together.
Yeah.
And get what was inside. They had no idea. We don't even discuss nothing that's on the website on the show.
You know how many people told me they tried to re-engineer the Founders Program by watching this show?
Hey,
and then they
impossible.
get into the Breeders Academy and they look at the Founders Program. They go, I had so much right, but those two secrets there, I missed completely. And without those,
There's
it doesn't
no way.
work. It doesn't work. You know what I mean?
Well, that's like when we was talking about earlier, after you get your seatbelt, the next two steps, when I started talking, I was like, oh, I can't say that. I can't say that. It's tough. If you guys only knew what me and Kenny went through by doing this live show. Now, when we do the masterclass videos, when we do anything with the members inside the website, man, it's a different ball game. I mean, Kenny actually get to look smart then. But here, we're struggling when we're talking about stuff.
Yeah, Lee says guilty of that. Yeah, I've heard it so many times. I've told everybody there was a couple projects I want to get done. I pretty much got them done. So I started working on the Masters Class videos. I was working on one today. And for the most part, I think, Frank, that's what we're going to do. We're going to work on Masters Class videos. So get ready to do some recording, serious recording here.
Yeah, I'm ready, buddy.
Yeah, I've got about 6 or 8 outlines ready to go. We've got 3 already recorded because I did one with the Beeman. Him and I were talking about stage 4, and I like the way we did it. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that into a Masters Class video and put it in there for now. But Frank and I are going to redo it again because I'm going to build some new illustrations and things like that. Then I'll put that in too.
That was a good idea.
Yeah, and then Frank
idea.
and I did 2 others that I'm working on. And then once I get those done, him and I are going to start recording again. And I'm just going to try to get them out as fast as I can. Just know they're a lot more work than what we do here. And I've been telling everybody that there was a time when I would take these live shows, I would edit them and then put it in the podcast. I'm going to do a little editing, and there's going to be some shows that I'm going to give more attention to. For the most part, most of these shows are pretty much going to be put right onto the podcast. So I'm eliminating one of the projects I do, which is editing, so that I can put more time into the Masters Class videos. So I'm really excited. I know my members are. I guess where I was getting at, Frank was saying how different the Masters Class videos are than this, is we don't hold back. We really talk it out. We talk all about the Founders Program. We go into detail. Then after that, I edit it a little bit. I put in banners to help illustrate what we're talking about, turn it from a video into a webinar, completely different. Right now, we're going through the Founders Program. Then we're going to tackle other projects throughout the website. We're going to hit the most important ones first. So I can't wait.
We're in the good stuff too. We're in the meat and potatoes, so to speak, of the Founders Program.
Yeah,
so it's a fun thing. And I know, Nancy, what you're smiling about because I done checked the comments. I know exactly what you're
what's
smiling
going on.
About.
Say it, Nancy.
This says, damn, y'all killing me. I was on track to getting your program down with the shows. I'll wait for the enrollment period.
Yeah, don't waste your time trying to figure out the Founders Program with the shows. It's just not there.
I had a sneaking suspicion what he was doing the way he was talking. So that's the reason I said that.
Right.
What was Derek saying?
Okay, so Derek was saying it's the only program where you don't have to add outside blood.
Yep.
Worth the money. You can have the best breeding program, but it ain't nothing if you don't know the defects and what to select for.
Yeah, that's so important. Yeah, there's other breeding programs out there. I haven't seen one I think is better than the Founders Program. And there's some that people are boasting about or trying to promote that just don't get you where you need to go, like the 5/8, 3/8 method. And I don't want to talk about it right now. We're going to take that thing apart completely. I've already got an outline ready to go for that. We'll talk about that in some of the other breeding programs, but you're just not going to get there.
Kenny, think about this. How dangerous would it be to be breeding a halfway decent program and not know what all the defects were? You're perpetuating those defects as you're going. So imagine breeding your fowl, okay, trying to get the best out of them, but you have no idea what all these defects are. And I promise you, without knowing, a lot of times you'd be looking right at them and you never know that was a defect whatsoever. But once they're pointed out to you, you got the curse for a lifetime.
Yeah. I'm going to help George out here. George, if you want to get in, let me know. Email me at breedersacademy@gmail.com. I don't want to see you keep making chicken soup. Email me at breedersacademy@gmail.com, and I will help you get in.
You're going to get a big list tonight. I got a feeling.
Yeah, because there was another guy up here was asking.
Not fair. Not fair.
There was another guy that was asking too. When are you going to open up?
Okay. Now watch. He'll be telling me tomorrow, I had to let 20 more in because I let George in.
Okay, I'm going to be fair about this. If you want to get in, contact me, and we'll help you get in. We've got over 300 members in there, and I'm happy with the members we have and how it's going. But if you really want to get in, contact me, and we'll get you in.
You've got a lot of people in there right now, and I tell you, I get a lot of them, so I couldn't imagine what Kenny's getting just in coaching calls and the questions and what have you. Kenny didn't want it to get so busy that we couldn't take care of everyone and put the needs and be there for them right then and there.
Here's the deal. I like the website to grow continuous but steadily. And the way we're doing right now is working great. I'll lose a member or I'll have a cancellation once in a while, but the membership is growing exponentially right now. But I want to make sure that I'm taking care of you guys, that you guys are getting the attention that you need, because I never want to see a member that's lost, frustrated, or confused. I do everything I can to make the website easy to understand, easy to follow, easy to navigate. Through the website is the easiest way to get a hold of me, because I don't answer many Facebook messages and things like that. I just don't.
No, they go through me. They go through me to get a hold of Kenny.
For those who think Frank's the back door, you can get your information from Frank's. He works for me, okay? Yep. He does coaching calls within the website. If you want to get through Frank, you need to go to the website too. He's not the back door for the Breeders' Academy.
A lot's found that out too. They've tried to use me for the back door for free information, and it's not going to happen, guys. I can promise you that. You can ask the others that's done it. It's not going to happen.
And that's what a lot of people think. They don't want to spend the time and money in the Breeders' Academy, so they think they can go through people who they know I associate with, and it doesn't work that way. But Texas said, thanks for the opening of the door, George.
Yeah.
Oh, man, I'm going to get all kinds of emails, aren't I?
Yeah. I'd say you're going to get quite a few on this one, Kenny. I'd say.
Okay, take advantage of it while you can, because like I said, I want the membership to grow, but at a proper pace. That way we're growing with it, because if it gets too big, then I got to hire more people. We got a really good team, and we're doing really well.
Should I clear my book?
You better get ready for some calls. Yeah,
you might need to.
I better clear everything for next week, looks like.
Okay, let's move on.
Yeah, you better hurry up and finish your school so you have more time.
Yeah, I know. And I took off yesterday, so that was a no.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I wasn't in it, wasn't feeling it. So I told Amanda, I said, I'm taking a day off tomorrow. I'm not going to do it. So this week I took off.
Oh, yeah, you did email me a couple times, or you messaged me a few times that you don't normally do on Wednesday, right? Yeah. I think you did.
Yeah.
I think about it. Okay. So we're talking about the true breeders are never satisfied with where they are. They're always looking for ways to fix and improve their family. And I always do that. I've had my birds for almost 30 years now. I may even be 30 years now. And I never just think that they're where they're at. I'm always looking for ways to improve them. I'm always culling the defects. I'm always culling the ones that aren't to my standard. I say it to Nancy all the time. Every year, what do I say? These are the best birds I've ever had.
Yeah, I think every serious breeder does that, because I tell Amanda the same thing. We was up there today, and I was going around looking at my stags that I'd raised this past year. And I said, I think these are the best ones that I've bred in a long time. She said, you say that every year? And I do. I say it every year. But they just awe me. When they get up and they start maturing, they awe me. They really do.
We say it all the time. As long as they're improving each generation, as long as the offspring are better than the parents, each generation, you're going in the right direction. That's your biggest guideline there. And it doesn't need to be a lot. Now, you are going to see huge advancements in the first few stages of the Founders Program because you're dealing with a lot of variation within the family, a lot of genetic diversity. A lot of those hybrids and those mongrels are going to be throwing all kinds of stuff at first. But as you go, it's going to be more subtle. Although you're looking for offspring that are better than the parents, sometimes it's a very small improvement. And sometimes it will seem like they're just as good, not a lot better, but just as good. The biggest thing is you don't want to go backwards. You don't want to breed offspring that are worse than the parents just because you think you need to breed some that year. I'd rather you not breed anything that year than breed something that's worse than the parents.
Yeah. You don't want to go back or be the same. The ideal is to go forward, not backward.
Derek's saying, and I talked to Derek a lot about this because he's got some birds similar to mine, my black pearls. And so does Frank. But we're all waiting patiently for the pictures of the black pearls. Derek, I don't know if you heard this earlier. It is raining it's clear today, but it's raining so bad here. I'm spending most of my time moving birds, cleaning up their pens. Their feathers are messed up. Just be patient. I'm waiting for the weather to clear up because I was going to do some video. I told some members I had a handful of short videos I was going to do for them. And then right after I said that, the storms started coming in, one after another. We just never got a break.
I'll say this, guys. I got a sneak peek at some of Kenny's younger fowl, some of his stags, and they look awesome.
Yeah, they do.
It was a mixture of the Maximus and the black pearls. And when he gets some pictures of you guys going to like it because they look nice.
Yeah, they do.
Look really good.
They're really good. Like I said, they're better than they were last year.
That's the main goal.
I was watching this video one time. He was talking about how his fowl progress and how he's creating a strain. Basically, what he was saying is that he has good years and bad years. And I'm like, that's not how it works. That's not how it should work. You should be seeing a progression. You should be seeing improvement, like we say, either a lot or a little. I wonder if maybe that's what he's talking about, where he sees. But no, he made it sound like he has bad years and good years. It's one extreme and a low extreme. And then he takes advantage of the times when they're really good. And then a year later or whatever, they're back to where they were. He says you never know where they're going to end up. Well,
that tells me a lot.
Yeah, it tells me a lot too. It tells me that he's dealing with a lot of genetic diversity within that family. He's probably one of those guys that thinks he has a pure strain, and he keeps bringing in birds every 5 years to freshen them up. Okay, so he's having to deal with that, and he's not seeing the progression he should be, or he's not selecting them properly. It's just not a true family. If you're running them through the program like we tell you to, and you got a pure family, you should not see good years and bad years like that. Now, I will admit, and I had it happen to me, where I had something come through my yard, and my birds took a hit. But then I regrouped, and right away I was back on track, and I was seeing the progression. Now, you could have a bad year like that, but to say that I'm going to have some years that are good and some are bad, that's not how it works. That's not how it works at all.
I would say, my pullets look better than my stags this year. And I would get that in my head. I'm not thinking the pullets mature faster than your stag. So by the end of the year, I'm like, I thought my pullets look better than my stags this year, but now my stags look better than my pullets. So it's a lot of things that go in, like you said, that can make you see it differently. But that's the whole purpose of purity of blood, is to be consistent year after year.
Now, I will say this that Frank just said, but it doesn't mean they're falling behind. It doesn't mean that they're crappy. Okay. We used to call them cock ears and hen ears, where it would alter. One year, the stags would look really sharp, and the next year it would be the hens. But it wasn't that the hens fell behind or they were really bad. It's just that the cocks took a leap forward and stood out a little more, okay? And then the next year it would be a hen year where the hens stood out, okay? Nothing wrong with that as long as I'm seeing improvement. I never want to breed to a bird that is worse the following year. The next generation, if it's worse, I do not breed to it. That's just how it works. If you have a year where you have cock ears and hen ears, and one is falling behind where the other one's moving up, then the one's falling behind, I'm not going to breed them. I'm only going to breed to the ones that are standouts that are moving forward. And you'll see more uniformity. You'll see more consistency. And you'll see that they're going to repeat themselves. They're going to reproduce themselves. That's when you know you have a pure strain. Now, I don't see those so-called cock ears and hen ears like I used to. The strain is leveled out quite a bit. Like this year, both the pullets are definitely better than the hens. The stags I have today, I can tell already they're going to be much better than the roosters. They're just getting exponentially better every year. I can't wait to take pictures of them and compare them to the ones I've been showing off.
That's what the reward is to me as a breeder. When you see that, when you see the offspring is that much better than the parents. That's my reward right there. That lets me know that I'm doing what I'm supposed to. I'm doing my job as a breeder.
Yeah, that's your guideline. Because the good breeders I know, when they see the offspring are not better than the parents, they don't just accept it. They want to know why. There's a reason why that happened. Something happened, whether a disease came in or they bred a bird they probably shouldn't have or something like that. They start investigating. They start looking at their records. They start looking at the birds they were breeding, and they try to figure out where they went wrong, and they fix it. It could be genes that were hidden. Now, we call them throwbacks sometimes, but sometimes they just weren't expressed because they weren't matched up to the right bird. Those things could either advance them or they can pull them back. Polygenic traits, which we call quantitative inheritance, are usually improved or ruined, or they go in the wrong direction because you're breeding to the wrong intensity. It's a learning process. Breeding, understanding your strain, especially in the beginning, it's a learning process. But once you get to know your fowl, you know which birds to breed, you know which ones are going to advance them, and then you move forward from that point.
I think you nailed it right there. When people are saying I had a bad year, it could very well be that they missed something in their breeding process. They put two birds together that they probably shouldn't have done, but they didn't realize that they did. And then they got a bunch of offspring
That's
that
true.
didn't end up being as good as it should have been.
Like down the road, they introduce a sill or they introduce some Peruvian blood or something, and it didn't express itself for the first couple of years. It expressed itself 3 or 4 years down the road. They go, oh, wow, I got a bad year all of a sudden.
That can destroy you.
Yeah.
That can destroy you right there. And a couple of years don't sound that much. But in breeding terms, that's a lot of time to be wasted, guys. That is a huge time. A couple of years, 2 or 3 years. That's a lot.
Yeah, because you're feeding all those chickens for that length of time. And we all know how expensive feed is right now. And I'm wondering if that could be part of it too, is the nutritional value of your feed.
You'd have to change the feed a lot to see those kind of changes from year to year. No, I don't think it's the feed. If it's the feed, then you're either always going to have good birds, you're always going to have bad birds, quality-wise.
Okay.
I mean, you'll see that.
You know, in some areas of the United States, they may not carry the feed that you used to have, and you're stuck with something
But you'd see those changes in all the birds all the time, okay? In the
on
health
your
and
whole
quality of the
complete
birds.
flock.
Yeah, I don't think
Yeah,
you'd see
okay.
sudden changes in their genome.
Oh, no. I wouldn't say that. I'm just thinking of different reasons why you would have a bad year.
No, you wouldn't have a hiccup because of feed. It would affect all of them, and it would be the quality of the birds you already have, not the birds are producing. You would see it in them first before you saw it in the birds are producing. But what I'm thinking too is they're seeing these huge changes in good and bad because they are introducing birds from outside blood, whether it's Asil or Peruvian or someone else's bloodline, into them. And they're just not seeing them for the first few years. It expresses themselves down the road. Because a lot of times when you add new blood, it never fixes them in one infusion, but evidence of it 3 or 4 years down the road, because the following generation, which would be the next generation, is all hybrid vigor. So any improvement you're seeing isn't really a good indication or representation of the birds you bred. It's the hybrid vigor that's giving you a false indication, basically. And it's not repeatable, it's not inheritable, it's temporary. So you go from these birds to hybrid birds, which are usually a bump higher, to crap. That's usually what happens.
If you're breeding the right way, the way you're supposed to be, you shouldn't have those problems. But if you've been breeding them for a long time, now if you're just starting out or you're putting something in like Kenny's talking about, adding Asil or the Peruvian blood to it, a couple years down the road, that's expected. You're going to. But now if you're having problems and you've had a bloodline, say, for 30 years, like me and Kenny has, and all of a sudden you're having a bad year, something's went terribly wrong somewhere. So you shouldn't be having those problems.
No.
If you're breeding them the right way. But now I have put a cock and a hen together, and they just didn't go well together.
Yes.
I'd have to switch them around to get a good start off. I've run into that. But to say, oh, these are junk compared to the ones that was last year, there's something bad's went wrong.
But what you're talking about, usually you see in the first few generations, okay?
Yeah.
Now, once you have a foundation line that's pretty established, to see those kind of changes that they didn't match, like the hen didn't match the cock, once you get into the foundation stage, you don't see that very often where two birds didn't fit, because that mix-up in the genome, that genetic diversity that happens to be there was already weeded out. It's already cleaned up before you ever got to the foundation. So if you're seeing weird things in the foundation stage, then something's really bad. Something happened.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I was like I said, if you've had chickens as long as we've had, say, 30 years, and all of a sudden they just popping up that you're saying, oh, God, these are nothing compared to what something really went wrong somewhere. And it shouldn't be that hard to find wrong.
Now, Lee makes an interesting comment here. I think those hybrids are going to end up being its own breed at some point. Not by themselves, as he probably knows, but you can create a new strain from hybrids. Yeah, if you find a hybrid, you find a cross, whatever, I'm just going to say it, that's a hatch and Kelso cross, whatever, but the bird represents what you're looking for, has the right conformation, right color, he's really healthy, has all the other attributes you're looking for, and I say, okay, that's what I want to reproduce. I get the best hen that I can. Chances are she might be a hybrid too, who knows? Bring them together. I'm going to see a lot of variation within the offspring. I'm going to pick the couple that I need to move forward with, and I move along with the Founders Program at that point, and I can create a family from that. That's exactly what the Founders Program was created for.
A major part of your percentages started out as being mongrels or crosses. That's your good families today started out as being crosses.
It sounds like we have some new people here watching us for the first time, so that we're not using terms that you're not familiar with or you think you're familiar with. A hybrid is basically a simple cross. It's offspring from a simple cross. Usually, if you want a good hybrid, you would breed a pure this and a pure that to get the hybrid offspring, but that's how you get the hybrid. So it's basically the product of a cross. Okay, when you're looking at mongrels, now a lot of people want to make that sound bad. They want to make, these a monstrosity of something. Okay, it's not that. A bird that's a product of 3 or more bloodlines is basically a mongrel. It's a bird made up of many bloodlines, okay? That's what a mongrel is. And I would assume most birds are mongrels out there.
I'm a mongrel.
Yeah, me too. Or a Heinz 57, as I like to say.
Yeah, I've got so many bloodlines in me. I don't think I've got that many fingers to count them all up, but yeah, I am.
I just recently found out that I actually have Dutch in me.
Do you really?
Really? Me too. I have Dutch. Yeah. Let's see. English, Dutch, German, Indian. My great-grandmother was a full Cherokee, and my grandmother was half. So I probably got more Indian than anything, but yeah, I'm a little mixed up. Okay. I guess I'd be mongrel.
So you guys are mongrels. Okay. We're going to have to work on you guys. Even when they're good, we talked about this a little bit, but I want to highlight a little more. Even when they're good, they can be better. Okay, there's always room for improvement, and I always tell people that. Don't ever expect that you're going to get to the end. There's no such thing as the end. You just keep improving them. Now, the quality in the beginning of the program is going to be, there's going to be more variation. You're going to see unpredictability, but once you get to the foundation, they become more uniform, but you're still going to improve them. You're always going to look for ways to improve them.
One thing I've always said, Kenny, it takes a good breeder to make his own strain, a true strain. But it takes a great breeder to keep them that way.
Yeah.
That's the hard part is once you get them there to where you call them your foundation line, it's keeping them your foundation line and keeping improving them. That's where the breeding muscles really kick in at.
It seems like they mess that up. Obviously, when they add new blood, they totally destroy it. Or they get to a point when they think they have to work on one trait at a time, or they're trying to improve one trait at a time. I know you want to improve that trait, but you're still looking for that complete package. They got to have it all. And a lot of people go, that means I'm going to have less birds to select from. That's what you want. You don't want to grow a bunch of offspring and you expect to breed to them all. You want to select the ones that are standouts, and that's what you move forward with, and that's what's going to take the strain to the next level. So yeah, breeding to the complete package means you're going to be selecting from a smaller number of birds, and that's exactly what you want to do.
Yeah. And it's actually easier that way. My God, could you imagine doing it any other way, Kenny?
I like it because that means I don't have to use as many pens. I can be more specific about the birds I'm breeding. I'm making better progress. It's funny, when they first become Breeder Academy members and they show me all their birds and they show me their brood pens and they're supposed to be one family, but there's variation, there's different qualities, but they're breeding them all. And then they wonder why at the end of the year, they're seeing huge differences in quality between all the offspring, when if they just said, okay, I've got all these birds, but these are the ones that stand out. I'm going to breed to them. And it's amazing, just by breeding just those few, how much better the strain improves generation after generation, because they didn't breed all those other mediocre birds too. It's the standouts that move you forward, not the entirety of the strain. It's the few.
That's it.
So I usually tell people, hatch as many chicks as you can manage and afford. Expect to cull hard. And the whole idea by the end of the year is to cull them down to the top 10% of the birds. And then from the top 10%, you're going to select the handful that are standouts that you're actually going to breed to. So don't breed everything. That's my advice to everybody.
I think that's the biggest mistake people make, though, Kenny, is breeding different individuals. Rather than staying in a small group with a cock and a hen, they want to do a trio, or they want to do 2 pairs, or they want to spread it out. The thing is to tighten that gene pool up, not make it a Lake Erie, so to speak. We need to keep it in proportions, tighten it up, so to speak.
I was talking to one of my members in a coaching call, and he was like, you guys are always saying breed to the standouts. You never want to breed to offspring that are not as good as the parents. He goes, is there ever a time when you need to? And I will say this, only time to breed to offspring that are not bearing the parents is in a back crossing situation. The offspring are not bearing the parents, so you take the best of the offspring and you breed it back to the parents. Those parents still need to contribute more into them. And then usually it takes 1 or 2 times in a back crossing situation. Everybody thinks it's line breeding. It's not line breeding. But in a back crossing situation to get offspring that are a little better than the parents or maybe a lot. And then you can move forward from there. So in a back crossing situation, that's the only time that I would breed offspring that are not bearing the parents because they just didn't produce them the first time. But you can. Point. Back crossing is breeding a bird to their hybrid offspring. Line breeding is bringing a common ancestor to their offspring each generation. By the time you get to 7/8 or 15/16, he has contributed a good portion of his blood or his genome into the line. So basically, you're trying to clone him. But back crossing, where people fail, is they look at back crossing as line breeding, which is not in line breeding, because a lot of times you're only doing 1 or 2 back crossing. Line breeding is actually multiple generations. You could go 5, 6, 7 generations in a line breeding program. Back crossing, you might breed only to 1, but where they fail too is when they do a back cross, they get the offspring, they take the pullets and breed to the father, they breed the stag, they breed to the mother. What happens then? They're encouraged to go in different directions at that point. No, that's not what you want to do. You breed the cock to the hen, the offspring are not better. So you look at the parents again, you say, okay, which one, I'm going to breed the offspring back to the parents because they needed some help. Which parent is better? You only want to breed to one of them. So let's say in this case, the hen is quite a bit better quality-wise. She has more of the traits. She has better conformation, better color. She's healthier, the whole bit. Then I'm going to take the best stag and breed to her and move forward from there. So understanding back crossing is the biggest battle. I think it's where people fail the most. Or
Kenny's just throwing them nuggets around like they're feed this evening. I tell you,
I know,
but you never know where it is.
Wow.
You never know where it's used.
I was thinking the same thing, Frank. Oh my gosh, Kenny, shut up.
Hey, I will say this: back crossing isn't the secret. There's 2 other secrets that we don't talk about.
Yeah, the members is going to know what I'm talking about, the nuggets.
Yeah.
Now, the first-time listeners might not pick it up, but the members, they'll know what I'm talking about.
But they're going to be awful interested after you said that.
What can I say?
He is, man.
Yeah, he's
you guys
generous to
are
Stephen.
lucky to be listening to this tonight because if he decides, I
have no problem talking about the seed fowl, and I have no problem talking about the back crossing part of it.
I think you have before anyway.
Yeah, we do all the time.
Yeah.
I think you have before.
we
anyway.
have.
Yeah.
But just in case if you're wondering, make sure that you watch our show because you never know
It's not the nugget
nuggets,
you think it is. Don't worry
what
about
nugget
that.
he might be saying that he will edit out for the audio podcast.
He's done it before. He's done it before.
That's an interesting thing that you guys said there is we normally do we do coaching calls and we normally record them and we usually edit them and put them at the end of a podcast. But I told Nancy, these days we're talking so much about the Founders Program that I edit so much out that it's not worth keeping.
Yeah.
I told her, I think we're going to stop putting the coaching calls at the end of the podcast because we're editing them so much. So we may not be doing that anymore.
You're talking deep into the Founders Program, usually on those coaching calls anyway. So it's tough. I don't know how you done it in the past. I really don't because that's tough to edit. It really is.
Yep.
It is.
What I did in the past, I'd have a members version and a non-members version.
I remember
So I
those.
edit it.
Yeah.
I'd take the good one, put it with the members, and then I'd edit it again. But I don't have time to do all that. We're just
That's a
not going
lot.
to do as much editing.
I need to get back to editing.
But
Now that Christmas is over.
to put them at the end of the shows like we were, I was editing one the other day, and I told Nancy, I stopped in the middle. I go, by the time I edit this, there's not going to be much here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's mostly the Founders Program that we're talking about.
And the
Oh.
jargon gets mixed up on it too. If you're not a member, what you would be listening to a lot of times too is really not going to make much sense to you because the way it's edited. It's hard to edit it to where somebody that's not familiar with the website is going to be able to follow it. So it makes it tough.
We're changing so much, but the members are going to be really happy because I'm giving them more Masters class videos, which is what they want. And I don't blame them. They're really fun. They're really good information. We're going to finish up this because I really like the topics on this outline. We're going to finish this up next week.
Yeah, before Frank blows away. I heard that. Was that your roof?
That was my actual roof. Did you see me look up?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
I got worried. The whole building moved. So I was like, oh, crap. But you know what? I was worried that there'd be a glitch in the internet. I was warning Kenny before. There's not been one glitch.
No.
And usually he called on me last week, and I was like deer in the headlights because it was during the glitch. So I didn't hear him when he called on me.
Yeah.
And this time, I don't think there was one glitch.
I saw a little bit. I saw a little bit of just a bit.
Yeah. I was like, wow, maybe it needs to come a windstorm more often. It straightened my internet right out.
Yikes.
But it was up on the mountaintop. I sent Kenny a video before the show and you could hear it, but the wind wasn't blowing down low. But now it's made its way down into the valley. So yeah, it's really getting with it now.
Yeah. So hold on a second. Just so you guys know, it's a little fun thing that we're doing at the end of the podcast from now on. And it's just a fun thing. We're going to put it at the end of each show. Even after the music and the last advertisement, we're going to put at the end show. This is something we call the after show. And Nancy read it. We fixed it up. I'm going to read a little bit of it real quick, but I'm going to let you guys all know so you guys can look for it. And what we're going to do is when we get done with this, we're going to get off the show, and Frank and I are going to have a little discussion. And we're going to share that discussion on the podcast at the end of the show. So it'll be a short little conversation that we're going to have. It's going to have music with it, and it's going to start like this. It's going to say, welcome to the after show. This is part of the show that doesn't exist. What happens in the after show stays in the after show. If you mention to your friends, which happens from time to time, no worries. Just tell them not to let our little secret out of this part of the show, something like that. And it says enjoy. And this is something we're going to do and have fun with. I saw it on another podcast. I just thought it was brilliant. So we're going to do that. But we're going to wrap this one up and continue this particular part of the show next week. We're going to do all about science and breeding. So make sure to go to www.breedersacademy.com to join our Breeders Bulletin, which is our version of the newsletter. You're going to get free tips, free ebooks, notifications, and announcements. And we're going to let you know when it's time to join the Breeders Academy, which I blew up today. So we'll see how many people join. I want to thank you guys for joining us and contributing to the show with your comments and your questions. You guys really do shape the show for us, and I appreciate that. Frank, I want to thank you for joining, and Nancy, thank you for joining us too.
There are some good questions that we didn't get to tonight. So guys, make sure that you ask them again next week. There are some good questions.
Really good
We'll have to
ones.
answer
And I'd
them.
like to say one thing. This one's for you, Lee. Keep those
Lee.
Albany's in the yard. Albany always makes everything better.
I got 88 comments that I didn't even see. I'm looking at the comments list. Did I miss something again?
You missed some humdingers, man. You missed some good ones.
Okay. We'll see you guys next week. I appreciate it. Bye.
Bye.
See you guys. Bye.
Okay. Thanks for listening.
Yes, thank you again for joining us on the Bred to Perfection podcast show. This show was brought to you by the Breeders Academy, where by becoming a member, you can increase your knowledge of breeding, advance your skills as a breeder, and take you and your fowl to the next level.
We can also show you how to create a strain from hybrid crosses or mongrel flocks and help you to create, maintain, and improve your present strains. We urge you to check it out. You have nothing to lose, and you can cancel anytime.
To join us at the Breeders Academy membership website, go to www.breedersacademy.com.
Best of all, I'll be there to help you every step of the way.
While you're checking out the Breeders Academy, make sure to sign up for our newsletter, the Breeders Bulletin. We provide a lot of free bonus materials and some great information that will take you and your fowl to the next level. Well, that's it for now.
We hope you join us next time for another episode of Bred to Perfection. We'll see you later.
Bye. Welcome to the after show. This is the part of the show that doesn't exist. What happens in the after show stays in the after show. If you've mentioned to your friends about the after show, which happens from time to time, no worries. Just tell them not to let out our little secret area of the show. Enjoy!
When you breed those birds, you hardly ever get anything worth culling. I mean, it's possible you will get it, but if you do your job right and you get them, you cull all the defective stuff, you get that bird cleaned up, that family cleaned up, you get nothing but nice birds out of them. And they reproduce themselves. That's the goal of it. Yes, hybrids can be bigger, faster, better, just all the way around better type chickens, okay? More vigorous, the whole 9 yards. But you can't keep making those birds, even those hybrids, if you're not maintaining the family itself, those two families that you're putting together. And that's what they don't understand. They breed them, they get good birds out of them, and then 4 or 5 years, one gets killed, one dies of something, a disease or something, they're gone. They're gone forever.
I look at that game as a patience game in that they get great results quickly, but then it fizzles out into nothing. Where if you're creating a strain, it's a slow but steady progress to something higher and better. And then once you get to a certain level, it's just a matter of maintaining them, which becomes actually pretty easy. It's like my Maxbis line out there. I don't have to do a whole lot to maintain them. You know, I just got to make sure I'm not breeding something that happened to be expressed that could actually ruin them, like a defect. But for the most part, I've got the type and conformation pretty well locked in. Same thing with my black pearls. I was looking at my black pearls today, just taking some time, really walking around, studying them, looking at them, because I'm kind of cleaning up the pens as well. And I'm just so grateful and pleased how well they're turning out. They got really good conformation of body. The color is just regal, and I'm not seeing any variations whatsoever in them. Wait till you see them, Frank, when you come here.
While I was there.
Well,
you can see the potential.
Yeah. All the young ones are all big now, and they look wonderful. But that took time. That didn't happen overnight. It took me a little while to get them there. And there was times when I felt like I was falling backwards a little bit, but I knew what to do to get them back. So now that I got them at this stage, it's just a matter of maintaining them, following the program, making sure I maintain the genetic diversity that I need without bringing outside blood. Then I can maintain them for forever. Now, the improvements that I'm going to be making are very subtle. That's why pictures are good. That's why videos are good. Keeping an eye on their progress over time. And I'm getting to the point, especially with black pearls, I don't know how much more I'm going to be able to improve them. I like them the way they are right now, which is awesome. But that didn't happen by adding new blood in every month, or I'm sorry, every year or every season. If I was doing that, I would have never gotten where they're at right now. Never.
Nancy?
You want to say something?
You wanted to say something.
No, you guys are right on track with what's going on in the chat room.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, because I even brought this up. Christopher is saying the hybrid made of hybrids is nothing compared to a hybrid made from pure birds. You guys can explain this one.
Well, I'll say it right here. He's
so right.
A hybrid bred to a hybrid is a mongrel. A pure bred to a pure produces a hybrid, which is hybridization. Once you start adding more bloodlines in there, this idea of a 3-way, 4-way cross is nonsense. All you did was just add multiple families into one, which is a mongrel. It means multiple families into one.
I think what Christopher, I could be wrong, but I think what Christopher's getting at is that the hybrids from two pure families is much better.
Oh, no, I get that.
From two hybrids.
No, I get that fully.
Yeah.
I'm just explaining why
he's right on.
Hybrids of hybrids is not a good idea.
Yeah, two hybrids, every time you breed them, the hybrids, and they're not a pure trait family, you go downhill. Pure family, you go to the max that you can actually get. So big difference, totally opposite breeding methods there. But a lot of people does it.
There's so many practices I see out there that are just ruining the strains. And I get it. You know, establishing a strain is complicated. It's not an easy thing. It takes a long time. But our goal as a breeder is to create strains that last a long time, that last generation after generation.
If you are enjoying the show and would like to learn more, I encourage you to join me at the Breeders Academy. By becoming a member, I can help you to achieve the competitive advantage.